Creativity, to me, is all about pushing boundaries and looking beyond the obvious. Now, expressions of creativity can be many, right? Say writing, poetry, dance, drama, painting, just to name a few amongst the many. But to be able to peek beyond the obvious confines of thought and to be able to create beauty in a place which is beyond the obvious is what it really is all about, I think. Also, to me, creativity knows no boundaries between art forms. All art forms are one and they all open into one another. For example, sometimes I think of a very good character while listening to music, or I suddenly think of a poem while painting something. So I think creativity knows no differentiation, and it is not just a form of expression. It's not just a form of newfound freedom, but it is a form of that godly element that each human being has and must explore. So I think, yeah, that is what creativity to me is. Writing to me and storytelling has always been dear, especially because it helps me understand myself better. Apart from giving me the creative satisfaction, it holds a mirror to my inner self and helps me unravel my thoughts. That unraveling, which lays out layers and layers of memories, observations, narratives, that I might have knowingly or unknowingly made, helps me take the final creative leap. So I think that is where storytelling and writing is very dear to me.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Closet Writer Chronicles. I'm your host Sangeeta, aka the Moody Marshmallow. You just heard our guest for today, Shivangi Patankar. Shivangi is a writer having worked in content writing and animation scripting in the edu-tech space. She is currently working on a picture book for children. Before all this, she has been a Spanish instructor, worked in retail, and has been a student of zoology. Tune in to hear about her journey. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Closet Writer Chronicles. This week I have with me Shivangi Patankar. Welcome to the show, Shivangi. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, just to sort of start off, the first thing I want to ask you is what is your earliest memory of being creative and when did you realize you enjoyed writing?
Actually, my earliest memory of being creative is when I used to learn dancing. I started Bharatnatyam at an early age, and that led to my creative streak being, ignited. Slowly over the years, as I was in grade 4 and 5, I got into reading, and I realized that there were so many perspectives to things happening around me, and I wanted to jot down my own little notes and things in my diary, that I started writing, and I didn't even realize that I had started the process of writing and penning down my thoughts. So yeah, that's when it all started.
So that's really cool. So then did you start so you started writing in school then would you say it was more like journaling or poetry, like what was it for you?
Yeah, it was more like journaling. It was more like a lot of thoughts in my mind, and I needed to clear them out at some point. Later in school, when I was in grade 7 or so, my school had a very good process. They used to take us for treks to Himalayan ranges every summer. And when I started traveling, yeah, when I started traveling with my school to places like Kulu Manali, Leh Ladakh, to countries like Malaysia, Sri Lanka, all at a young age, between I think 7 to 10 standard. It gave me a wider perspective. It gave me a big canvas, and that's when I started writing travel diary, more of journaling, more of point making, more of perspective shifting. In the sense, when I used to sit down and write in my room, there was a certain way I was thinking. But I realized that when we climbed the mountains and when we reached at the top and we looked down, things seemed so trivial, the quarrels, the small things that we have in our daily life. My perspective shifted, and that's when I wrote my first story, sitting on top of a hill and talking about the same things but from a very different perspective. So I think, yeah, it was more of journaling and travel writing and things like that.
But that's so cool, that you kind of like in a way travel or like nature in a way inspired you to write your first story.
And more than nature, it was also the people I met during those travels. People from Himachal, people in the trains. Till at that young age, it's all about your family, maximum extended family and friends and teachers. But when you meet people of totally different, strata, totally different region, and you look at the difficulties they live in and everything, I mean, it just adds to your enrichment of words, ideas. So I think, yeah, nature and people, because people is something that I've been always curious about. Like, you'll find me staring at people on the road, just thinking about what that person is thinking, or why is he thinking that, and then writing something about it. So yeah.
I completely relate because I do this too. Like anywhere, like say at whenever I'm out and I'm sitting, even at a bookstore or like a restaurant or anywhere, I'm like just looking at people and I'm making up stories in my head about what this person is doing and what their life is like. So completely relate to that. I think there's a term for it called sonder, which is basically like the realization that other people also have like their own lives and their own sort of independent stories, and all of us are just background characters to theirs.
Hmm. Yeah, all the worlds at play.
Yeah,
True.
for sure, Matt, for sure. So, kind of moving more into like your professional journey, what I find really interesting about your sort of career trajectory is that you studied zoology, then did an MBA in marketing, worked in project management, became a Spanish instructor, and now work as a content writer. And you're also writing like for children, uh, like you've just started. So, how did these shifts happen for you? Like, how did you go from like point A to point B to point C? And, what has your journey been like, till now in this aspect?
Yeah. So, first of all, it was organic. It was not planned that way, but it turned out really well because when I started learning zoology, my primary thing was I wanted to go for medicine, but then I wanted something closer to medicine once I didn't get in, and zoology seemed like a very attractive subject at that point. And that's when I got into zoology. While studying zoology, I realized that I loved it, but uh, it was not something that I could, pursue a MSc and PhD in and would want to do a research in. So I thought of doing a management degree later so that I could combine my zoology knowledge and, work in some institute like Wildlife Institute of India or something similar, and, have a management and zoology background put together. At the end of my management degree, my horizons had widened, and
Okay.
my zoology interest is still alive today. Definitely, I still have friends from that background who are, way deep into the subject now. But I realized that I wanted to get into retail. So I started applying into, firms that were more into retailing different stuff. And that's when I got into my first job. In my first job, I was into category management. So, category management is that, you buy stuff from the major vendors, like, you have your PNG, HUL, and then you
Hmm.
stock it for the stores. So that seemed a little dry at the beginning to me, but then when I got into it, I realized that it, combined pricing, promotions, working with the agencies for, ads and things like that. And growing up, I always had this image of me going to office and doing business stuff, because I saw you see your parents do that, right? I saw my
Yeah.
dad do that. And he used to, like, he works with a textile company. And uh, as growing up in 10th standard, 11th standard, he used to get books of project management and, Lean Six Sigma, Kaizen, all of those. And I read all of them at that age, because
Wow.
I was in love with books at that time. And, books like Who Moved My Cheese, and things like that, all management related stuff. So I wanted to apply all of that after having an MBA, and I got a real good exposure with the job I did. Post that, I moved to the US. And when I was in the US, I realized that now that I have a master's degree, and I wanted to learn something absolutely new. That's one thing with me, that I never want to stop learning. Uh, it can be any direction, because knowledge is knowledge, is how I look at it. You should never stop, and you should never limit yourself to, oh, I don't have a degree in this, so this is not something relevant to me. That's how I look at it. So uh, I had a University of California just next to my house, and I wanted to explore the country. I wanted to explore studying there, and I wanted to learn a new language badly, because with my science and my commerce degree, language and my love for writing and books and all that was, behind. So yeah, so that's when I enrolled for Spanish. Also, when I was in my graduation bachelor's, I had got picked up by Times of India in a college editorial board. So they had this competition, and where they, picked eight of us, and we had a photo shoot, and they took us to TOI office and taught us how printing was done. We wrote articles for them. So that had given me a validation of, I could do something that others could like. My writing had a standard. That's the validation I got. um, and I wanted to use all of that and learn a new language. So with that enthu, I got into Spanish. um, Once I got into Spanish, I loved that too, because I had a class with all nationalities. And it was an extension evening class, so evening 6 to 9, and people would go to work and come back, and I was not working, I had just moved. They absorbed me really well. And time just passed by, 2 years, 8 semesters. And I also took their specializations, and as a part of that, I got exposed to their culture in terms of films, literature, food, all of that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so we had like beginner to advanced levels, and then we had three papers that we could pick, pick and choose. So I had one on literary cafe, one on Andean and Central American culture, and one was on uh, yeah, so that one was on films, right? So yeah, so it was a real interesting experience. And post that, there was no thought of, teaching or doing anything with it. I was enjoying reading Spanish books, poems, movies. And then when I had my daughter, and then when we moved back to India during the corona season, um, I happened to intern with a institute that used to teach Spanish, and I wrote articles for them in Spanish as a content
Okay.
writer. Yeah, and they offered if I would like to teach. So I said, why not? Let me try, because it was an online era because of Corona, and it was a freelance thing. And I started teaching, and that really took on. Like, it's still going on, and I primarily teach kids now between age of, I think, 4 to 15.
Okay.
And yeah, so I took classes for adults, then I took a class for a kid, and it really clicked. I felt like it was natural to me, so it went on. So yeah, that's been rolling. So that's how it has all organically happened. But the only constant has been that I have never shut myself to any opportunities, never shut myself to any avenues of learning. And I think, yeah, that has taken me on this roller coaster. So
And then you started as a content writer with Vedantu?
Yes, yes. So I started as a content writer with Vedantu. I wrote animation scripts for
Oh,
app for
wow.
them. Yeah, so it was like for kids between 2 to 4 years of age, and they were learning objectives given. So it was a total new thing for me. But I loved it. I enjoyed it. I did that. Then I also worked with a company. They had a merger going on with another Madrid-based firm, and they wanted somebody to translate, do the translation of MOMs and things like that, and attend their account meetings. So I worked with them for a short time, like the time that they had their merger on. And I'm currently working on a book, children's book, and applying to various places and working at some as a content writer. So yeah, doing that, juggling all of that.
But that's
So
so no, but that's so cool to even just hear, like like from where to where, like you've started and kind of gone through and now like what you're doing. It's crazy. And the fact that, but what I love about, like what you even, how you spoke about your journey is that there's like optimism. I feel like you're very open to sort of experimenting and trying new things and, kind of making the most of what you can with, whatever it is you're trying, which I think is really cool. And I think that's a big lesson for everyone in life, especially given how unpredictable today life is, to just kind of keep yourself open to things and, experiences and I think opportunities to learn, like you said. But, looking back, how do you really feel about, this sort of trajectory you've had, considering where you started and where you are now?
yeah, I think I am pretty much satisfied, and I'm very happy with how it has been because it has given me the right balance in life. At the same time, I'm somebody who likes a lot of things. So
Okay.
I'm sure that if I would have, that's how what I realized when I was doing zoology, that I love the subject, but I don't think that's the only thing that I want to do in life. I want to explore a lot of new other subject areas. Like I remember when I was in grade 12th, and I still, I have a thing for Indian military, and I love being. So I was giving entrance exams for medicine in Indian Army. So it's
Oh,
been so
wow.
damn varied. so. So I'm really happy. I'm really happy, and I want to keep trying um, to like get to places in terms of my career, in terms of my experience, and have more touch points in life, basically. Um, uh, for some people it might look a little scattered, it might look not focused, but I think if you to each its own. Means I mean For me, being too focused and getting XYZ gives me a lesser kick than doing like 10 things of different types and not denying any opportunity to grow. I think that matters to me. So I think, yeah, to each his own. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but that's, I really like the way you put that across. And, like something that's honestly coming to my mind and I'm curious about is like, how has, I guess, sort of family and friends played a role in this? Because obviously, like, it's not a very conventional career trajectory that you've had. So, like, how have they, no, because I'm really curious, like, were there times where they were like, okay, Shivangi, we need to sit and talk, like, what's going on? Or were they like, yeah, go for it, go do what you think feels right? So I'm just
Yeah.
curious. And also,
Fortunately,
no, and also, I think just to add, like, you got married, you have a kid. So, like, it's a lot of life changes. So I'm just wondering how that kind of fit in, with your sort of decisions with professionally, like what you wanted to do.
yeah. Yeah, fortunately, I've been like my family before marriage, my parents, my brother, and now my husband's family, they've been really supportive of my constant learning endeavor. Um, Thankfully, I'm not around people who would just want an end result and not bother about the learning curve. Having said that, I also, was quite flexible, and that has helped me in a way that when I was working with the retail firm, and I got promoted the day I decided to get married and
Oh,
move
wow.
abroad, leaving my job. Yeah, and they gave me a letter saying, we wanted to promote her to manager, but she's moving abroad, she's getting married, and yeah. So. I didn't think twice before doing that, because I realized that what mattered in my personal life was the right person and the right time. And at that point, I didn't look back and, fret about leaving my hard earned job and my profile and my promotion and things like that, because I knew life would give me that opportunity later if I kept at it, if I kept being optimistic, and if I kept learning, if I didn't give up, it would come around sometime. And that's how I look at things. So I gave it up in 15 days and I moved. And when I was abroad, I didn't have the, the legal opportunity to work. But I decided not to look it down, and I decided to learn something new. And even then, frankly, people were asking me, Are, what will you do learning Spanish? Because I was in California and Spanish is second language there. So there was no chance of me teaching Spanish there. I mean, there are PhDs around and people talk Spanish locally, but I never looked at it as a opportunity to make a career. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I did my best at it. I got featured in their magazine, the UCSD Extension magazine, as a bright student and things like that. And I did my best. And after coming back to India, it turned out it paid me in a different way in terms of a whole new career. So I think if we always have an end in mind, like means to an end, it doesn't work out. We should also do things for the love of it, for the passion of it, and I think things work out at the end. Also, with my kid, she loves me doing new courses. Like I recently finished a course in data analytics from business data analytics from ISB, and she was sitting with me and helping me with the project, and not being around, letting me focus. So I think these things matter a lot. My husband, my in-laws, everybody has been really supportive. So I'm blessed that way, and I've also kept my flexibility on, so both work.
Yeah, but that's no, but that's really amazing to hear, because it is like it's a huge thing, I think, to just also have that kind of support system, which is why it's really cool to kind of, see you sort of thrive and really kind of live your life in the best way possible, right? For you, like this works for me and you have the support, which is always such a big thing. So more power to you, Shivangi, for doing such amazing things. And it's honestly such an inspirational journey. I don't think you realize, like, to go from here to here to here. Like, just listening to it, I'm like, wow, how is she managing this? Because I feel like I could talk to you, say, 10 days from now, and suddenly you'll be doing something else, and you'll still be like, and you'll be doing really well at it as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm also learning audio script writing as right now. So uh, basically, I love writing and I want to explore all aspects of it. So I'm trying to learn new forms of writing, and that's where the children's book writing has also come in. I did that course last year. It doesn't need a course necessarily, but I took up a course and I did that. And at the end, I realized I did have a book in my mind and I wanted to start working on it. So, yeah, I think that course gave me a direction as to what should be my first book. So, yeah, that helped.
The Jericho children's writing program.
Yes, the Jericho UK children's writing program. So it's run by a lady called Eleanor Hawkin. She runs the course for children's writing, and it's lovely. So I had an opportunity to talk to people who are working on different categories within children's writing, and I'm working on a close to a picture book.
Oh,
So
wow.
I was yeah, so I'm working. I was the only one who was working on kids with such a at such a young age. So that was different, and I had inputs from all those co-participants, and it was lovely. So yeah.
No, but that's amazing. But then, what kind of drove you to kind of get into children's literature? Because that is something you are kind of working on now. So, how did you kind of decide that, okay, this is something I'd like to venture into and see?
So, when I was in California, due to some friends, I had the opportunity to go to the children's hospitals there. And when I went to those wards, I saw kids as young as few months to 2 years, 3 years, pre-read stage. They're not able to read, they're not able to talk, they're just able to, like, feel and touch their parents, and cry and things like that. When I looked at them staying there for months together, I also realized that children's hospitals there are well equipped with rooms with toys and books and things like that. But this age group didn't have anything to comfort them apart from their mom hugging them or things like that. Um, I'm not sure if picture books will appeal to them, but I'm planning to write something for the parents who
Okay.
take care of such children, so that the parent reads it to the child and the child also enjoys it, in terms of its illustrations and a few words here and there that the child can understand. But it's something, I don't know exactly what it is going to be, but it's going to be something to comfort this age group in such a situation. So that is something that's clicked me when I was in those wards with my friends taking rounds and things like that. And I didn't know if I would ever write a book like that or what it would be. But when I joined this course, they asked us to channelize thoughts and think about what we really wanted to write. And I realized that there are a lot of books in other categories for children. I mean, it's a big category, big genres, and many things around. But such books are far and few, and they're needed, especially in our country. Where there all children's hospitals might not have such extensive wards, they might not have dedicated libraries for such wards. So I want to write in this field for now, and then probably at the beginning, not sell them, just make them reach the right audience, and then let's see. So yeah, that's my plan.
Oh, that's amazing. Like, would you say that maybe even is your daughter also a reader? Is she
Yes,
also, would
yes,
you say, a
yes.
part of your journey in terms of getting into children's writing?
Not really. I mean, she was not somebody who made me get into children's writing. I wouldn't say that. But looking at her enthusiasm for it, I realized that if a kid, you know, what would you say, hangs on to a book and, loves a writer or loves a certain kind of a book, it really influences them. It really shapes
Yeah.
their life. And that happened to me too, but with my daughter I'm seeing it, like, it's fresher in my mind now. So I really want to, it's a big thing to say, I might not be able to do it, but I really want to create an impact with what I write in general, even if it's fiction or short story or a book or an article. It might be a small thing, it might be a small impact, it might be anything. It might even not be an impact, but I don't want to, I want to attempt to put quality out there, and things that really matter to the readers. They might be children or adults. I somehow don't want to put out things that don't really matter and they just read and discard it. Having said that, it's not like I would, I'm a great writer or anything, but I want to write stories that matter to people. Yeah, so that is something that I'm clear about.
No, that's amazing. And, hopefully we will manifest all of this into the universe right now. As I
Yeah,
always
yeah.
say on this show, I always tell my guests, it's okay, just put out whatever it is you want. Let's just manifest and see, right? Because you never
Yes,
know what might
I hope
happen.
so. I hope so. Fingers
So
crossed,
yes,
Sangeeta.
yes, fingers crossed for sure. But yeah, kind of going back to you and learning Spanish and sort of being an instructor. What has learning a foreign language done for you in a sort of creative sense? And do you see, and I know you have written, things in Spanish, but do you see yourself even writing stories in Spanish later on?
Yes, I do, but I think that will take quite some time because I still have a lot of reading to do in Spanish. I've just read a few books, and I think reading helps when you think of writing something. So you have to read a lot before you can even attempt writing. So I'm getting there, but that's not my aim as of now. I might do it someday. Right now, I want to absorb as much as possible in terms of their literature. Um, I did get introduction to a few poets and writers like Gabriel Garcia Marquez and Pablo Neruda and people like that. And we studied them academically because it was a part of my course in literary cafe. But I want to get beyond that and understand from where they wrote, where they came from when they wrote a certain piece. And I think when I get to that level of understanding is when I can even think of writing something in Spanish in terms of literature, like a story or things like that. Also, learning a foreign language has been lovely in the sense it made me feel at home. First of all, when I was in California and people around would talk Spanish, not that I felt alien, but I felt like I wanted to understand what they were saying. So when I learned preliminary Spanish, I started feeling at home. I felt as if I got the vibe of the place. You know what I'm saying? You get the vibe of the local people and the local culture, apart from the normal English that we have. And it also helped me widen, as any foreign language does, my thoughts in terms of we perceive certain kind of we perceive certain countries, perceive certain communities in a certain way, but when we learn more about them is when we respect them more, is when we understand them more, and then you start seeing how similar they are to how we are,
Hmm.
I started building all those threads when I like weaving all those threads when I was learning Spanish. Oh, they have big families like us. Oh, they have certain festivals, certain kind of food items. Yeah, so that it opened the world for me, I would say. Also, learning in a class where everybody else had heard Spanish, and my only exposure to Spanish was Ricky Martin and Shakira songs. Uh,
Yeah.
I was a complete blank slate, but the way they taught us, the interactions, and the way they took me from one level to level 9, all that gave me immense respect for the university, for the way they teach, uh, the way my classmates absorbed, each other's culture. And there was one lady who would bring all the food items that we would be taught. She would make all that at home and get it to the class.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, she was from Alaska. And so there was one South African guy, and he had also never heard Spanish. And he would ask me about my culture, and I was a newly married girl at that time. And I had come from an arranged marriage, so they were all really curious about how that worked. And they wanted to see all my Indian wedding pictures. Apart from that, when I did the course on films, we all had to talk about a film, and I gave a presentation on Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara.
Oh, wow.
because
Okay.
because I wanted them to understand Spanish in our movies and things like that, the influence of Spanish in our movies. Though Goa has a lot of Hispanic Spanish influence, and in other pockets elsewhere, but this was a mainstream movie, and they were stunned that it has been shot in Spain. And yeah, the actors look so good. And they had certain perceptions of how Indian actors would look and talk. So starting from there, a lot of barriers broken. So it was lovely. Yeah.
Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara is a great film, also, just to, put
Yes.
that in perspective. It really
Yes,
is. So,
yeah, I know. If I don't know if Zoya Akhtar would ever listen to this, but I wrote to her one way on Facebook that
oh,
evening after I
wow.
presented. Yeah, I messaged her and I told her, I've done this, and presented, and people loved it, and this is what they thought about your film. And yeah, it was one way, but I did, write that because I felt like sharing it with her. It was such a lovely experience, the way they reacted to it. And I also made a lot of lifetime friends in that course. A few of the teachers are now my lifetime friends. Few of my classmates are, and like they were varied people. Like one lady was PhD in Greek and Latin, and she used to
Wow.
teach in Chicago. And this she was learning this post retirement, so she would tell us about Greek and Latin after classes, and yeah, yeah, it was lovely.
That's so cool. That's really amazing. And also manifesting to the universe that Zoya Akhtar sees this message and also lands up listening to this podcast, this particular episode. Oh my god. But no, it's really amazing to kind of hear that. And because right now even just regional language and other language stories are really also like kind of like picking up and doing so well. So there's definitely a space in terms of say translated work as well. So it would be really cool. I won't be surprised if sometime from now, Shivangi, I see you like translating work from Spanish or translating work to Spanish and seeing your name on the cover of a book saying translated by
Oh,
Shivangi Patankar.
let's manifest that too.
Yeah, we're manifesting a lot of things because why not? But no, I really can see that space, for so many people. And especially since Spanish has become like such a strong suit for you as well. And there is clearly a very emotional connect you have with the language as well, which always, I think, adds, right, to anything. But yeah, speaking of stories, what are some of your favorite stories, just in terms of things that have really stayed with you or impacted you or inspired you? These can be books, films, TV shows, absolutely anything. And do you have any favorite writers?
Okay, yeah. So I love, I would tell you in a chronology. Growing
Yeah,
up,
sure.
I first fell in love with Mark Twain, with all Tom Sawyer and
Okay.
Huckleberry, all of those classics. Um, I also loved a book called Heidi. I don't know if, I'm not sure if you
Yeah,
must
I
have read
love, yes, I
by
love that
Johannes
book. Yeah.
Hyrie. Yeah, so that
Yeah.
was something that stayed with me as a young girl. I loved R.K. Narayanan's work in terms of Malgudi Days and uh, that. Uh, there are a few other books that stayed with me. As I told you, as I was growing up, I was reading books from my dad's closet, and Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Oh wow,
Um,
okay.
yeah, and Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, uh, is other two books that stayed with me. In terms of Ayn Rand has a very strong lady protagonist, and that's when I felt like women have a place in world, and those kind of thoughts. I was in, I think, grade 9, but that gave me a confidence that that the lady in the book runs a railroad back in 1920s 30s, and she takes all the decisions, and lady of steel, you might say. And that gave me the first taste of ambition, so that stayed with me. Also, I, I would forage into anybody's bookshelf I would go to. So from my grandfather's bookshelf, I picked up a book called A Search into Secret India by Paul
Oh,
Brunton. Yeah,
okay.
and that was written way back in 1934,
Oh
where there was
wow.
a different reality. And I read it as a child, and I realized that even at that times we would hear of particular stereotypes that India has abroad, but this book doesn't talk about those stereotypes. It has a absolutely different perspective. It's very refreshing. It's very sensitive to who we are as an country, and yeah, I loved that book. I loved that book. You must read it if you ever get a chance.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and Jonathan Livingston Seagull by Richard Bach, and Seven Habits of Highly Influential People. And yeah, so a lot of Who Moved My Cheese was one favorite. It was a management book, and yeah, so in that phase of mine, I read that. I personally love reading biographies. Um, right from Queen Elizabeth to Hitler to Benazir Bhutto to Andre Agassi to Losing My Virginity by Richard Branson, about
Yeah.
how he developed the Virgin Empire.
Yeah.
So I read all of these, and I think they have shaped me in a way in terms of generating my interest in people. Also, what stayed with me were a lot of stories that my mother told me as I grew up, because my mother loved listening to interviews like the one we are doing, and loved reading books, and she would make it a point to tell me all of that in between, my studies and when I'm watching TV or anything of that sort. And I kind of absorbed all of that growing up, and those stories have stayed with me. Also, she grew up in a different state. I mean, she grew up in Madhya Pradesh, and her father would get transferred every 2 years. My father grew up in Gujarat, and I grew up partially in Gujarat, then Maharashtra, then I was in Malaysia for a few years. And so, growing up, my mother told me stories of the 20 different schools that she moved, like once every 2 years, and the four universities that she went to. And right from the areas which are called Bastar, where they wouldn't have any uniform, and there would be snakes hanging from the roof of the school classroom,
Oh, wow.
to after 2 years they would go to a place that would be a major city, and there'll be a cultural shock, and how they would adjust to that. So she had a lot of such stories, and they were all real. So I think I picked up a lot from that, and they stayed with me more than anything. Also, if I talk about a few shows, then shows would be, there's this Turkish show called, it's a historical fiction called Magnificent Century. So, Muhtazem Yüzel, it's called. It's available, I think, on YouTube too. So it's about this Ottoman Empire, right from the beginning to the end, and it's very refreshing in terms of giving you a historical background of how 14th and 15th centuries were for the rest of the world, apart from what we know about India, the Mughals, and all of that. And it has everything from details about slave trade to queens to how coffee was first introduced outside Africa. Apparently, it was first consumed in Turkey, and the queen loved it. And so, a few facts there, but a lot of historical fiction and a grand show. Um, Also, one book that I'm currently reading, it's called Katha Sarita Sagara by Somdev. It's like the father and mother, it's like the parents of Panchatantra, but
Oh, okay.
it's not animals, it's all love and marriage and things between celestial beings, the fairy tales and the folk tales of ancient India, you would say. So it was first written down, I think, in first century CE in some unknown language, and then it was again reworked in 11th century AD, and now it has been translated into English from Sanskrit by many people. But it has the origins of a lot of stories that we hear, from our grannies and things like that, and you'll be able to link, oh, this story is a part of that. Oh, so this celestial being is this. So it's not gods, it's all demigods, and all those kind of creatures, and it's one story that leads to other, like the Arabian Nights, one
Oh,
after the
wow.
other,
Okay.
woven into one another. So yeah, that is something. Yeah, I could go on, but yeah. Uh, so yeah, also a lot of books that I got introduced to while in the US. They have huge literature sections, and I loved the magazines that were there. Literary short stories, and like the Granta, the writer, Glimmer Train, and I would just sit there and read them and buy them, and things like that. So yeah, that phase helped me a lot with my Spanish going on one side, and knowing that there's such a lot of value and respect and such a lot going on in that field, literature and writing and new writing. uh, yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of
No, but
things.
that's no, but that's amazing, and I love that list of like recommendations. There are a lot of I think books from there which I want to like check out. So thank you so much for sharing that. But something you mentioned which I found interesting is that, you said that, your mother sort of moved around a lot. And even, just coming to like yourself, that you mentioned that even you moved around a bit, while growing up. And then, of course, like, you moved to the US after marriage and then you came back. So then I want to ask you, like, what is sort of, I guess, in a way, identity been like for you in terms of, I guess, belonging to a place? Because when you kind of tend to move around this much and you have obviously significant things happening in your life, whichever way, there is a sort of, I think, it almost becomes like a third culture kid situation also, where you're like, okay, I resonate with this, but I also resonate with that, and it kind of forms a whole new dynamic for yourself, right, in terms of culture. So, what has that been like for you?
That I wouldn't say that has been really smooth. That has been traumatic at times. That has been great at times. More so in childhood, because you have your set of friends, you have your school and everything, and then suddenly it changes. Having said that, because I was listening to my mom's stories when I was growing up, I always realized that okay, I'm moving after 5 years. She would move like every 2 years, so
Oh,
mine is
wow.
better. And growing their generation, they didn't have like telephones at that time. They just came in by the time she graduated. So a lot of her friends from childhood, she's missed out on meeting them ever again or writing to them, unless she visits that town again. And girls, most of them are married elsewhere. So I thought at least I am able to write to my friends, I'm able to talk to my friends. I am still in touch with all my friends right from the age of 3, and I make it a point to keep in touch, because I feel that's like, to me, that's life, Sangeeta,
Hmm.
very frankly. To me, life is not staying at a place for 30 years.
Yeah, yeah.
Because then, there are some people who derive their identity normally from staying at one place. Okay, this is my house, this is my society, this is the language I speak, this is the kirana shop I go to. But somehow, because of my mother's conditioning, I was always prepared in a way.
Hmm.
And though my dad's job was not transferable, but he did have to take like few transfers. We also moved to Malaysia before I got married, and I was alone working in India. My parents were in Malaysia. My mother was moving between Malaysia and India. My brother was in a hostel somewhere. Um, but we were all dedicated in terms of letting dad do what he wanted to do, understanding where all that came from. And it never felt like a sacrifice. It always felt like, yeah, this is what is given, and this is how it should be. This is how we are supposed to live now. uh, I think I got that learning quite early in life. The first school I changed, I really missed my old friends and for long. And I had a cultural shock when I moved to Bombay from Gujarat, from Surat.
Hmm.
And I really felt like I was in a big city and people wouldn't smile at me and I had no new friends. And that impacted me deeply. I felt lonely for quite a few years. But then I started realizing that I had learned it now. So if I ever am lonely, I know how to handle it. I looked at it that way. And yeah, I tend to look at things like that.
No, but that's really cool to hear. And yeah, more, like I said, more power to you. And yeah, we're kind of coming to the end of this interview now, and we always end with these last two questions. So the first one is, what are your aspirations? What are you looking forward to in the near or even, distant future? This can be anything, creative, personal, professional, anything.
Yeah, so I am looking forward to a full-time job in something creative. I am looking to devote myself to something creative, but as a paid venture full time. So I am working at, looking up things in that zone. I'm also personally looking at finishing my book. And uh, somehow, there's sometimes language of the world, and I have happened to meet a few of my friends from past who are now at good places in the hospital management field. And it just feels like I'm supposed to write the book now. That's all I'm supposed to do. So I want to really make most of that and write that. I want to read more of Spanish. I don't want to lose touch. And I want to be fully, I am fully, but I want to be fully involved in my daughter is 6, and I think this is the right age to imbibe reading and writing and other skills. So I want to be fully dedicated to imbibing her with the right things at this age, so that she develops the love for it. What she does later is her own calling, but I want to work towards that. So yeah, that is what I'm looking at.
That's amazing. And finally, what is a piece of, advice or learning you'd like to share with people? Again, this can be personal, professional, something you've just kind of experienced yourself in life and you wish that more people were aware of.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an advice per se, but it would be something that I've learned, um, is just to be open to the flow of life, um, not to restrict yourself, because often it's all in our mind. We restrict ourselves in our mind in terms of, oh, I wouldn't be able to do this. Oh, this is something that I've never done. Will I be able to do it? Don't question yourself. If you think you like it, just put yourself in it, and it might lead to something. It might even not lead to something, but you never know where that knowledge comes handy. And even if it doesn't come handy, you've learned something more in this world, and that's never a problem. So I think I often come across people, around me, in terms of friends and people I know. They look at getting something tangible out of everything that they do. We often, in creative field, we don't get to do that. We wouldn't have a big payout, or we wouldn't have a big book published at the end of every writing endeavor we do, but we do it for the love of it. I think that should be applied to other areas of life too, and I think life becomes simpler. Simpler is what I would say. Yeah. So yeah.
No, that's amazing. And I really do agree also with that, with what you just shared, because I think even I relate in terms of my own sort of personal journey. I feel like I've been through quite a few things where I completely agree. I think just be open to flowing with life and be open to learning, right? And growing and sort of absorbing life for what it is. So yeah, on that lovely note, we have now come to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for being here, Shivangi. It was lovely talking to you. I hope you had fun.
Yeah, I loved it, Sangeeta. It's been a long time since I have had such deep thoughts about what I do and how I do, and it was lovely chatting with you. So thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. So that was my conversation with Shivangi Patankar. That was such a lovely chat, and I really gained some new perspectives on life and creativity. Ending the episode with a few pieces written and narrated by Shivangi. I hope you enjoyed the show, and I'll see you next week with a new guest and a new chronicle to share. Talk soon!
So today I'm going to read from three of my unpublished pieces. The first one is a poem that I wrote when I was coming out of a long drawn writer's block. And one of my dear friends had suggested that we write with each other, give each other prompts, and help each other out of our writer's blocks. So, yeah, once I came out of it, I felt liberated, and I felt really happy to be back. So, that's when I wrote this down. Let me smile today and free myself. Give myself the liberty to be joyful. Uncloak myself from the shadows of the past and light within me the fire for tomorrow. Let me cry today and shirk away the pity that comes from self neglect, from apathy to feeling love towards the being inside. Let me smirk and laugh today at the floating palaces of my uncharted dreams, so that they mean something when I try to build their foundations tomorrow. Let me try today and dig my past, for once not to be unfulfilled, but to pick up the shreds of unwoven blankets, waiting and waiting for long. To not cry over them, but to get over them, to not wish them away, but put them in perspective, so that they teach me how I look at them when I look at them in my future. The second one is a piece I wrote when my daughter was just born. It was a few days, and yeah, I wrote this out of my love for her. Sown by destiny, secured by love, bound by purity, our world is one. You came into my life long before you arrived, like blessings and fairies shower and shine. The third piece is something that I call a love letter to my daughter. If I ever have to see, I shall see through your eyes. If I ever have to be, I will sit still by your side. If I ever have to laugh, I shall borrow your ease. If I ever have to love, I shall beg you to teach me, please. Yeah, so these were the three pieces that I wanted to read out.